Hey, welcome back if you've been watching the stream all day, or for the last 2 days, as a matter of fact. I'm Scott Jardin from the Bullen Companies, as you can see behind us, and Mark Warner, National Sales Manager, and we're going to talk a little bit about technology today, I think.
Well, today's program, it sounded good. This episode of the Bullen Virtual Week.
Yeah, from the Bullen Broadcasting Studio.
From the Bullen Broadcasting Studios, BBS, and anyway, today we're going to talk about all this. You know, what's virtual communication? What is this all about? Why did it become necessary? And it forces us to take a look at what did we used to do. Yep. You know, now that all this has come, it's kind of comical to think back to what we used to do. I remember back in the day when every sales call was a face-to-face sales call, and in fact, if somebody paged you on a pager, you had to have memorized where all the payphone booths were that had the extra long cords so that you could pull it out and use your calling card ID to punch it in and make a call.
Or a bag of quarters.
Or a bag of quarters. So that's kind of where a lot of folks that have been involved in the sales process remember that from history.
Yeah.
And I'll bet you had a few payphone booths memorized.
Oh yeah, you bet. Yeah, that in bathrooms. Yeah.
So that all kind of evolved into us getting used to having cellular technology, and what that allowed us to do is to contact a lot more people in the course of a day. So where before we were somewhat limited by who we could physically get to with the car, and half those phone calls I was talking about was either calling an order or to call a customer telling them I'm running 5 minutes late. So, you know, if you weren't sitting at the phone booth, you wouldn't be 5 minutes late. Yeah, I know, but, and then the cell phone came along and it gave us the ability to contact and communicate with many more people in a much different way. And so some of the meetings that we would normally have had in a face-to-face session, we found that we had the opportunity to have those meetings with our cell phone capability. And it kind of led us into an arena of coming to realize, wow, I can do a lot of business on the phone.
Yeah.
And so people would spend an awful lot of time working with phones. In fact, calling centers sprung up, and there was a whole, essentially a movement around using audio communication via phone as a way of taking place of the face-to-face sales call. Yep. And obviously, things have evolved even further. The biggest issue that we're faced with right now is COVID-19, and the fact that we're all recognizing that we need to separate ourselves by 6 feet, no contact with anybody else, face masks, and washing your hands about every 6 minutes. Kidding, but I go about 7. But with that said, it's a different age, and the biggest fear about moving into this age that we're in is what happens to the Jansan sales rep's secret weapon. Well, you might ask, what's the secret weapon? It was the face-to-face demo, the tabletop demo. In fact, Bullen was one of the pioneers of coming up with tabletop demos to be able to show a purchasing agent something that you might have in the past only been able to show to an environmental services director who was on the floor. Yep. So the tabletop demos was a pioneer exclusive.
And then maybe shortly before that, but they usually went together, as we were pioneers in audio cassette tapes that would go with those demos. So that was literally virtual training at the time. You put the tape in your tape player and you listened to it and you did the demo, and you did it over and over again until you could get really good at it, and you had to remember if the demo kit involved water, you had to make sure you had water before you went in, because the worst thing you do is start a demo and it's like, can I get up and can I go get a little bottle of water? I'll be right back. Don't lose the train of thought.
You have a spare trigger sprayer in your desk?
Yeah,
well,
but yeah, cassette tapes were like the early thing of virtual training, and then those demo kits, we videotape the demo kits, the demos now. But,
So earlier this year, one of the things that we did here at the Bullen Companies was we made a very focused effort in talking with the entire nationwide sales team about how we're trying to use technology to develop a brand new sales process. And what does that mean? Well, it means things like GoToMeeting and things like Zoom meetings, and the fact that there's some degree of communication lost, even though the same words may be exchanged. But if there isn't eye contact...
Yeah, we noticed that earlier in the week. We were having some one-to-one meetings with distributors, and it was a disconnect if they were just on the phone and we were on screen, we couldn't see them. Yeah,
and the conversations were the same conversations, but there was the same words exchanged, literally, except some degree of a loss of communication. And it was a light bulb moment, really, for me at that, realizing just how much communication gets lost when you don't have the ability to look somebody in the eye and see their face and see how they're responding to what you're saying. So the point is earlier this year, we were telling the sales team, you're going to have to know how to use Zoom meetings. You're going to have to know how to do GoToMeetings. You're going to have to make sure that you're set up the right way and that you don't have birds flying around behind your head. In fact, Scott, you put together a whole tip list on what to do if you are doing a virtual Zoom meeting or GoToMeeting.
Before I get to those, let's give props out to some of the people that have been presenting over the last 2.5 days. Were those salespeople we talked to, and they really dialed up their game and being able to get their presentation skills together. And we thank you for all of the Bullen sales team that participated this week, because you guys really did a heck of a job. I mean, it's not easy to learn how to do this stuff real quick.
Well, I want to ask all you guys that did this all week, how's it feel to be first in class?
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
There's going to be a lot of people that see this. They will comment on what they like. They will criticize us about what they didn't like. They'll mimic us and copy us, but they can never take away that we were first.
Yep. So a couple basic Zoom tips if you want them. First off, you need good bandwidth. That's very important. We learned that early on. We were doing a couple things before we started doing the streaming. We were running on wireless, and we said, this isn't going to work. No, I don't know if there's a bunch of people in the plant watching YouTube videos when they're supposed to be on the filling line or what, but we made that change, boom. Another thing is good lighting. We have very good lighting here. Microphones. People don't think about that. Audio is, even though it's a visual thing we're talking about with Zoom meeting, audio is extremely important for any Zoom meeting or any of these online type things, because you want to be able to hear them. If it's echoey or whatever, or it's breaking up, it's not good. The camera placement. So let me go up this. So are you gonna? Where's the person going to be shooting? Don't get too close to the camera. Don't get too low. All that stuff. With a Zoom meeting, you have the ability to look at yourself before you turn the show on. Do that. That's important. You want to look at what you see, what's behind you. Very important. Is there like a fan going so it looks like it's going to cut your head off?
Well, yeah, and that could cause somebody to have like a nervous breakdown to see that.
Yeah, or you've got a light. Maybe you set your camera up so there's a window behind you and you're dark because the light behind you. So just basic stuff. Look at, before you start the, say, connect or whatever the button is you hit, start show. Look at yourself, and is that something you'd like to see? So those are my short tips.
More tips. More tips.
Go ahead.
Close the door. I've seen a lot of where the dog comes walking through, and or grandma peeks around the corner. Hey, you busy? Your lunch is ready. You know.
Tell the other people in the house that you're going to be doing a Zoom meeting, and please don't come in. Right.
Yeah.
Or don't run the leaf blower outside of your office in your home office. Don't run. Or we have a firehouse directly across the street. And the one benefit of that was when we had our fire, it was right across the street. But now it's like, we've unfortunately only had one time, I don't want to jinx it because we have one more show to go, but only had one time where it came on, and it was fortunate that it didn't happen when we were doing it.
I heard they know we're doing the show, and the calls that they've been getting, they've been saying, look, you're going to have to wait about 10 minutes before we can bring the trucks out.
Could Ridley take that one? Because these guys across the street are doing the show.
So anyway, that's kind of where we are at current, and talking about GoToMeeting and everybody adapting to all that. And your comment on audio, I wanted to tap into that. One of our guys was really, really pleased to find that wearing an earbud and a mic actually greatly enhanced the audio on the GoToMeeting and Zoom meeting feeds. And so there's a learning curve that everybody goes through. But ultimately, you're going to get to the point where you might want to do kind of like what Tony Robbins does, you know, where you're talking to very large groups in a seminar setting in a live streaming fashion. And let us tell you that doing something broad-based to a live audience worldwide is challenging. It's been very educational for me to see everything that goes on behind the scenes. In fact, if you want a little snippet of just how many people are needed just to help support and how much equipment, just to help support Scott and I talking to you, take a look at this feed. You know, the little bit of the equipment that comes on back and behind the scenes.
That's Nikki Jordan, and who's the head of our marketing department, and Alex Jordan, our chief technology officer, who's manning that equipment. We're not going to tell you what we're doing, how we're doing it, because that's the secret sauce.
These are trade secrets.
But if you ask us, we might help you out a little bit. But don't expect Alex to come over and run the rig, or Nikki.
So, you know, we're bringing this up because virtual communication becomes part of the future. And the way that we're set up here took a lot of effort to get it set up in a very, very literally futuristic way. And our belief is that this is the future. This is what our future is going to be. To go in and do a tabletop demo may not even be viable anymore. Our option on doing tabletop demos might be pulling out our cell phone and saying, that's what this does when you use it. So the idea of having digital ways of supporting what we used to do, which was a physical demo, has become absolutely critical. And then there's a look deeper into the future. Can we talk about that, Scott?
I don't know.
We're talking virtual communications. So when we get into things like putting together sales pitch, we can, talking about product, talking about processes, which you guys know a lot about. You spent a whole year on that. So what you might be thinking about is, where does VR fit into this? And if you're wondering what VR is a virtual reality goggles that you'd put on. Gamers know that. And you put them on and they literally put you somewhere else. You might be in a battlefield, or you might be operating a floor machine in an OR room. So that is where VR goes, and there's a level beyond that. And the level beyond that we see currently in use in medicine. We see it in use with pilots, and that's called AR. And AR is when there's equipment that's attached to glasses or goggles, which has a way of transmitting onto the lens or in front of your eye things for you to pay attention to. So AR to a pilot might be indicating he needs to look at his altimeter, or he needs to look down at his flap setting. An AR for somebody doing disinfection may focus on the disinfection bottle label, so he's reading the label properly, and then isolate in the room those high-touch areas he needs to focus on. So that's AR. We're not there yet. Pilots are there, medicine is there. We're not quite at VR yet, but that might be a little bit closer. And in fact, where we are and others want to be is the ability to have a studio like this to do live streaming conversations with people like yourselves.
We certainly all hope that we'll get back to what it was before COVID hit, but even if COVID goes away completely, I think we're never going to get back 100% to what we were before as far as all that face-to-face stuff. People, I mean, some of this being able to not call on people physically and all that, people are starting to appreciate that, you know, we're maybe a little bit more efficient in some areas because of this new normal. So it's never going to go back 100%.
I believe that. In fact, there was a quote that I read in a book by Napoleon Hill once, that the human mind, once stretched, never returns back to its original size or shape. And so what's happening is we've done that as humankind. We've stretched our minds. We've stretched how we think. We've broken the paradigm of thinking we had to carry briefcases around and do face-to-face sales calls. And To your point, Scott, I think this is giving everybody that's watching this program a window into the future. And be prepared for opportunities to present themselves.
Yep.
And be prepared for the challenges that will also present themselves. It's inevitable. Everything's a learning curve. So
Yep.
with that, I'm really, really proud to have been part of this program. I don't know how many people on planet Earth have done 8 live broadcasts per day, 3 days in a row.
Yeah.
Not even your top shows on TV are doing
Yep.
8 episodes in a day, 3 days in a row.
And that's not counting Monday and Tuesday when we had individual meetings with a multitude of customers on top of that. So
On top of
it's
that.
been a very, very busy week. And as I said, I think in an earlier show, the nice thing about this is when we're done, we have one more. When we're done, we're going to be able to just walk away and go home. We don't have to wait for the boxes to come out. We don't have to get on the airplane and fly back to our families.
There may be recognition of a ritual. You'll have to tune in to see what I'm referring to.
Yes. Yeah. Well, that's it for this one. Thank you very much again for tuning in. If you're watching this live, we have another one coming up at the top of the hour at 4 o'clock. If you're watching the replay, we thank you very much for watching this replay and all the other ones. So stay safe out there, and thanks a lot, Mark.
Thanks, Scott.
Yep.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in.
And thank you guys behind the TV there doing all the hard work.
Perfect.